Rima stood at the gate of the mansion, barefoot and shaking. Her feet were swollen, her belly heavy with the child she was carrying. It was late at night, the wind cold against her skin, but the coldest thing wasn't the weather. It was the people standing in front of her, her husband's family. They didn't look at her with love or concern. Their eyes were hard, their faces blank, like she was nothing to them. Tears rolled down Rima's cheeks, but she didn't even try to wipe them. Her hands were too busy holding her belly, trying to protect her baby from the pain and fear that filled her heart. She had done nothing wrong. All she wanted was to be a good wife, a good mother. But here she was, standing outside like a stranger, like a beggar, while the people who were supposed to be her family treated her like trash. One of them, her mother-in-law, stepped forward and pushed a folded paper into Rima's hand. "Sign this," she said coldly, "or leave this house tonight." Rima looked at the paper, her hands shaking. She didn't even know what it said yet, but the way they were all staring at her told her everything. This wasn't a kind request. This was a threat, a warning, a final blow. She looked at her husband, Nalo, hoping for support, hoping he would say something, do something, but he stood behind them, silent, not a word, not a glance. The same man who once held her close and promised to protect her, now acted like she didn't exist. Her heart broke a little more in that moment. The house she once called home was now a prison, and tonight, they were kicking her out like she was nothing. She was 8 months pregnant. She had nowhere to go, no money, no plan, just her baby, and the necklace her late mother gave her before she died. That necklace was the only comfort she had now. Rima wanted to scream, to ask why they were doing this to her, but no words came out, only silent tears. Her lips trembled, her body felt weak, but deep inside, something else began to rise, a tiny spark, a small voice telling her not to give in, not to sign that paper, not to let them win. As the minutes ticked by and the family grew more impatient, Rima held the paper tightly in her hand. Her heart pounded, not just with fear, but with the first stirrings of strength. She didn't know what she would do next, but one thing was clear. She wasn't going to let them destroy her. Not tonight, not ever. Just a few months ago, Rima was the happiest woman in the world. She had married into the Duro family, one of the richest and most respected families in the city. The wedding was like a fairy tale, big, beautiful, and full of promises. Her husband, Nalo, treated her with so much love at first. He called her his queen. He bought her gifts, made her laugh, and held her close every night. Rima thought she had found her forever, but everything started to change the moment she got pregnant. At first, it was small things. Nalo stopped calling during the day. He came home late and didn't smile like he used to. When she asked if something was wrong, he just said he was tired. She believed him. She thought maybe the pressure of becoming a father was getting to him. But soon, it became clear. It wasn't stress. It was rejection. Then came the hurtful words from her mother-in-law. At first, she would say little things like, "You better pray it's a boy," and "This family needs a real heir." Rima tried to ignore it. She smiled through the pain and hoped they would love the baby no matter what. But when they found out the baby was a girl, everything got worse, much worse. Nalo started sleeping in another room. He barely looked at her. He stopped talking about baby names. He didn't even come with her to her doctor's appointments anymore. And his mother, she became crueler every day. She would make comments like, "Girls are a burden," and "You've failed your husband already." Rima would cry alone at night, wondering what she had done to deserve this. All she ever wanted was to be loved, to build a happy home. But the people around her made her feel like a disappointment just because she was carrying a baby girl. A little girl who hadn't even been born yet, but was already being blamed for everything. Rima's heart ached, not just for herself, but for her unborn daughter. How could they treat an innocent child this way? The love that once filled her home was now gone. The smiles, the laughter, the gentle touches, all replaced by silence, cold stares, and whispers behind her back. Rima felt like a stranger in her own house. Every day became a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. She tried to talk to Nalo, to remind him of the man he used to be, the love they once shared. But he wouldn't listen. He would just walk away, sometimes without saying a word. Rima was left alone, holding her growing belly, with only her baby's kicks reminding her she wasn't completely alone. And so, What began as a dream marriage slowly turned into a quiet war. Rima didn't know it then, but this was just the beginning of a storm that would change everything. Rima stared at the paper in her trembling hands, her heart beating so fast it felt like it would explode. The document was not just an ordinary paper, it was a trap, a cold, heartless trap. It said that she must give up all her rights. Her name would be removed from anything that belonged to Narlo, his house, his family inheritance, his future businesses. If she signed it, she would have nothing, not even a right to her own child's future. Her eyes filled with tears as she tried to read through the words. The paper was full of big legal terms she didn't understand, but the message was clear. They didn't want her to be a part of the family anymore, and the reason, because she was having a girl. Narlo's mother stood there, arms crossed, looking down at her like she was trash. "A weak woman cannot give birth to a true heir," she said coldly. "You've already failed us." Rima's chest tightened. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. This was her baby they were talking about, her innocent daughter, still in the womb. How could they say such things? Narlo stood there too, silent, not defending her, not stopping them. The man who once held her hand, kissed her forehead, and promised to protect her, now stood like a stranger. His eyes were empty. He didn't even look at her. That silence hurt more than 1,000 insults. They pushed the pen into her hand. "Sign it," they said, "or leave our house tonight." Rima looked at the paper, then at her belly. She could feel her baby move, as if sensing her pain. Her hands shook. How did love turn into this? How could a family be so cruel just because she was giving birth to a girl? She tried to speak, to beg for kindness, but her voice cracked. No one listened. They had already decided she was useless, disposable, just someone who failed their expectations. But deep inside, something stronger than fear began to grow in her. She realized she didn't need their name, their house, or their money to be a good mother. What she needed was strength, and in that painful moment, something changed in her heart. She didn't sign the paper. She quietly folded it, placed it back on the table, and looked up at them. Her eyes, filled with tears before, now burned with silent fire. She was done begging. She was done crying. They thought they were breaking her, but they were wrong. Because from that moment, Rima was no longer the scared, weak woman they saw. She was becoming someone else, someone stronger, someone ready to fight for herself and her baby. They thought she would give up, but Rima was just getting started. That night, while the whole house was quiet and everyone had gone to bed, Rima sat alone in the corner of the room, holding her belly and thinking. She looked at the paper again, the paper they had forced into her hands, asking her to sign away everything. Her hands were shaking, her eyes were swollen from crying, but deep inside, she had already made her decision. She would not sign. She would not give them what they wanted. She was going to protect her baby at any cost. The moon was full in the sky, lighting up the compound with a soft glow. Slowly, carefully, Rima stood up. Her back ached and her feet were swollen, but she moved like a woman with purpose. Quietly, she picked up a small plastic bag. Inside it, she placed only 2 things, her hospital card and her late mother's necklace. That necklace was the last thing her mother gave her before passing away, and it gave her strength. With her heart pounding and her baby kicking gently inside her, she tiptoed through the long hallways of the Duro mansion. No one saw her. No one stopped her. She opened the gates slowly, then stepped out into the cool night, barefoot and alone. Rima had no idea where she was going. She just walked. She walked until the lights of the big houses disappeared behind her. She walked until the air smelled of dust and fresh earth. Her feet were bleeding. Her legs were tired, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. She had to find safety for her baby. Finally, just before dawn, she saw a small clinic at the edge of a village. It was nothing like the big hospitals she once dreamed of giving birth in, but to her, it looked like a place of hope. She walked in, almost fainting from exhaustion. The nurses ran to her side when they saw her. They didn't ask about her husband. They didn't ask for money. They just saw a tired, pregnant woman and gave her a place to rest. They laid her gently on a stretcher in a quiet room. It wasn't a bed, but it felt like heaven to Rima. She clutched her mother's necklace in one hand and placed the other hand on her belly. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe. But that peace didn't last long. In the middle of the night, she felt a sharp pain in her back, then another, then another. Her water had broken, The baby was coming, and it was too early. Nurses rushed in. Everything happened so fast. Rima cried in pain, but she also cried in strength. She knew this was the moment her life would change forever. Rima cried out in pain as the nurses held her hands. The labor was hard, too hard for someone who hadn't eaten well or rested for days. The pain was strong, and for a moment she thought she wouldn't make it. But deep inside, she remembered why she had run, why she had fought for her baby. She bit her lips, held her breath, and pushed with everything she had. Then, suddenly, the room filled with the sound of a tiny cry. The nurses smiled and lifted the small baby into her arms. It was a girl, beautiful, soft, and glowing like a blessing. Rima looked into her baby's eyes and felt something new. It wasn't fear anymore. It was strength. She whispered the name, Zara, into her daughter's ears. It meant light in darkness. That's what this child was. Born in pain, born in fear, but also born in hope. Rima kissed her forehead, tears rolling down her cheeks. For a moment, the world stood still, and nothing else mattered. But the joy didn't last long. 2 days later, while Rima was still recovering, the nightmare returned. Loud voices came from outside the clinic. Lawyers in expensive suits walked in with 2 men from Nalo's family. They didn't ask how she was. They didn't ask about the baby. They came with papers and a cold look in their eyes. They told the clinic staff they had filed a missing person report. They said Rima had run away with their family's child. They claimed the baby belonged to the Duros, not to her. Rima's heart dropped. She held Zara tighter, as if someone might try to pull her away. One of the nurses tried to stop the men, but the lawyers pushed past. They said they had come to take the baby home, but Rima knew the truth. They didn't want Zara because they loved her. They wanted to control her, to use her, to erase Rima. One of them even looked Rima in the eye and said, "You are nothing without our name. That child is not yours alone." Rima felt a fire rise in her chest. She had gone through too much to lose her child now. She stood up. Even though her body still hurt from giving birth, she looked those men in the eyes and said, "She is mine. I carried her. I bled for her. I almost died for her. You will not take her." But they wouldn't stop. They threatened to call the police. They said they had power, money, name. But Rima was no longer the same scared woman. She was now a mother, a warrior, and she was ready to fight for Zara, no matter what it took. As Rima sat in the clinic, holding her baby tightly and trying not to cry, she felt like the whole world was against her. The threats, the pressure, the fear, it was all too much. The Duros were powerful and rich. She was just a weak, tired mother, with no money and no one on her side. But just when she felt like giving up, something unexpected happened. A young woman entered the clinic. She had a calm face, but her eyes were full of fire. She walked straight to Rima and introduced herself. "My name is Taif," she said gently. "I'm a lawyer, and I believe you." Rima was confused at first. Why would a stranger believe her? Why would someone she'd never met want to help? But Taif sat beside her and explained everything. She had heard about Rima's case from a nurse who was worried, and when she recognized the Duro family name, her heart had burned with memories. Taif had once been close to the Duros too. Years ago, she had trusted them. She had worked for one of their companies, but they had betrayed her, just like they betrayed Rima. They lied about her, ruined her name, and pushed her out when she spoke up. Taif had fought her way back with nothing but courage and the law, and now she had one mission, to make sure the Duros never destroyed another woman again. "I know their secrets," Taif whispered. "I know the games they play, and this time they messed with the wrong woman." Rima looked at her, speechless. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel alone. Taif wasn't just talking, she meant every word. She offered to fight for Rima for free. No payments, no conditions, just justice. The very next day, Taif began gathering evidence. She visited the mansion Rima had fled from. She found people who had seen the way Rima was treated, a maid who had been fired for speaking kindly to her, a driver who had overheard cruel words from Nalo's mother. Slowly, the truth began to build. Taif also dug up old papers, documents the Duro family had hidden, business fraud, property lies, even fake reports to cover up their actions. And with every truth she uncovered, she got stronger. Rima watched all this in awe. This young lawyer wasn't just helping her, she was teaching her how to stand tall again. For every tear Rima had cried, Taif turned it into strength. And together, They were about to show the world that power doesn't come from money or big names. It comes from truth, from courage, and from women who refuse to be broken. As Taif continued to dig deeper, what she found shocked even her. She had expected lies, but the truth was much darker. One evening, while going through a folder she received from a former Duro family staff member, she saw something strange. There were medical reports with Rima's name on them, but something didn't feel right. The dates didn't match. The handwriting was different. After checking with the hospital, the truth came out. The Duro family had forged Rima's medical records. They made it look like she had mental health issues, trying to make her seem unfit to raise her own child. But it didn't stop there. Taif also discovered a second set of birth documents for baby Zara. The names were changed. The mother's name had been replaced with someone else's, a distant relative of the Duro family. They wanted to erase Rima completely and claim Zara as theirs. All of this was done behind Rima's back while she was still recovering from childbirth. They wanted to steal her daughter and act like she never existed. The most painful discovery was about Nalo's will. Before his sudden disappearance, he'd created a will that gave everything, the house, businesses, even savings, to Rima and their child. But the document in the Duro family's hands told a different story. In that version, Rima got nothing, not a single thing. Taif could see the signs. Someone had changed the will, forged signatures, switched pages. They wanted to throw Rima out with nothing while keeping all the riches for themselves. But then, something unexpected happened. A miracle in the middle of all this pain. A housemaid, who had worked quietly in the Duro mansion for years, came forward. She said she had seen Rima crying that night in the living room when they gave her the paper to sign. The maid had hidden something all this time. A tiny hidden camera she had once installed for her own safety after being falsely accused of theft. That hidden camera had recorded everything. Taif rushed to get the footage. Her hands shook as she played it. And there it was. Rima standing barefoot, her belly heavy with pregnancy, tears falling from her eyes. Nalo's mother yelling at her, his father pushing the paper into her hands, and the cruel words, "Sign this, or get out tonight." The camera caught it all. The threats, the fear, the pressure. Taif knew this was it. This video was the key. Proof that Rima was being forced. Proof that everything the Duro family had done was illegal and cruel. With this, the story would change. No more lies, no more power games. And as Rima watched the video with Taif by her side, she didn't cry. She nodded slowly. The truth was finally out, and justice was now within reach. The courtroom was packed. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. This case had become the talk of the whole country. News cameras were outside. People whispered and watched closely as the doors opened. And then Rima walked in. She wasn't the scared woman they once pushed out of their house. She wasn't crying or weak anymore. She wore a simple, beautiful dress and held baby Zara close to her chest. Her head was high and her eyes were strong. The same woman they once called useless now looked like a queen. Even the judge paused for a moment when he saw her walk in. Nalo's family sat on the other side, nervous and restless. Nalo's mother kept looking around, whispering to her lawyer. Her face was tight with anger, but deep down, she was afraid. She had lied. She had faked documents. She had tried to steal a child. And now, the truth was about to be spoken in front of everyone. When it was time, the hidden camera footage was played in the courtroom. You could hear a pin drop. Everyone watched in silence as Rima appeared on the screen, heavily pregnant, standing at the gate, crying while Nalo's parents shouted at her. They told her to sign the paper or leave. They treated her like nothing. The video showed everything. Gasps filled the room. Even some of the court officials shook their heads in disbelief. Nalo's mother stood up and shouted, "That video is fake!" But the judge silenced her. The lawyer, Taif, stood calmly and presented all the other evidence. The forged medical files, the fake birth certificate, and the changed will. One by one, the lies crumbled. Rima didn't speak much. She didn't need to. Her eyes, her strength, and her story had already spoken louder than any words. When the judge finally stood to read the verdict, the room went completely silent. Full custody of the child, Zara, is granted to the mother, Rima. The court also finds the Duro family guilty of coercion, document forgery, and attempted fraud. There was a pause, and then loud applause broke out in the courtroom. People clapped, some even cried. It was like a wave of justice had washed over the room. Narlo's mother sat down, stunned. She had lost. All her power, her lies, and her plans had failed. Meanwhile, Rima hugged Zara tightly. Tears rolled down her cheeks. But this time, they were tears of relief. Outside the courtroom, people cheered for her. Reporters wanted her story. But Rima simply smiled, kissed her daughter's forehead, and whispered, "We're free now." And just like that, the woman they once tried to break became a symbol of strength, not just for mothers, but for every woman who had ever been told she was not enough. After the court case ended and the truth was out, Narlo's life started to fall apart quickly. Just a few days later, people found him lying unconscious in his office. The man who once walked with pride now looked weak and lost. His business partners had all left him. They didn't want to be connected to someone with such a dirty past. His accounts were frozen by the bank. No more fancy cars, no more power, no more respect. His name, once known in big circles, was now whispered with shame. The world he built on pride and lies had come crashing down. Even his own family started to distance themselves. Nobody wanted to stand beside him anymore. And when he woke up in the hospital, he realized that everything he had taken for granted was gone, especially Rima and Zara. One rainy evening, he showed up at Rima's small but peaceful home. He didn't come with lawyers or family. He came alone, tired and broken. In his hands was a small teddy bear. He stood outside looking unsure, then slowly knocked. Rima opened the door. She was holding Zara, who was now a few months old, and smiling. The moment Narlo saw them, he dropped to his knees. Right there, in the rain, he begged. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Please, Rima, I was blind. I didn't protect you. I didn't deserve you. But please, let me be part of her life. Let me make things right." Zara reached out a little hand toward him, innocent and unaware of the pain her mother had been through. But Rima didn't move. She looked at Narlo for a long, quiet moment. Her eyes didn't show anger. They didn't even show sadness. Just strength. The kind of strength that comes after surviving deep pain. Without saying a word, Rima gently closed the door. No shouting, no insults, just silence. That soft closing sound said everything. Inside, she held Zara close and whispered, "You don't need anyone who didn't fight for you." Meanwhile, Narlo sat outside in the rain, crying, not because he lost money, but because he lost the only people who truly mattered. It was a powerful moment. Rima didn't need revenge. Her silence, her strength, and her peace were enough. She had already won. And now, her life was no longer about proving anything to anyone. It was about raising her daughter with love, dignity, and truth, the things Narlo had failed to give. And just like that, the chapter closed. Not with anger, but with quiet power. Rima had the final say, without saying a word.